you focus on really like hacking the real estate system. What is your mission and how do you use your business to impact the world?
My mission is to help people become successful entrepreneurs and teach them how to people become financially free, focusing really on the Latino community, like the English-speaking Latino community.
I want to learn more about your backstory. I know, now you're a multimillionaire, you're super successful, fancy guy, right?
Second business is we used to smuggle people across into the U.S. from Mexico.
Smuggling humans?
The crazy part is I thought all kids sold drugs because the fish doesn't know that it's in the water, right? I was born into this environment where it was normal, in my garage. Like, how do you get these Lamborghinis? It's like, well, he owns business.
What's up, Disrupt Nation? My name is Tony Delgado, and today we have a really special guest, my man Jorge Contreras. Jorge, thanks so much for being on the show, dude. Really appreciate it.
For having me on. Appreciate the opportunity.
So you're known on the interwebs as the Airbnb Coach. You don't even have a name in my house. It's just
Coach.
The Airbnb Coach.
That's right.
And often imitated, but can never be replicated.
That's right.
But you focus on really like hacking the real estate system, right? And here at Disrupt, we're always talking about people who are disruptive, people who are innovative, people who are on a mission to change the world. So before we get into your backstory and all that fun stuff, what is your mission and how do you use your business to impact the world?
Yeah, the mission I'm on right now is to help 1 million people become financially free, focusing really on the Latino community. Like the English-speaking Latino community is the community that I focus on. And growing up, it was always a struggle because I didn't feel like entrepreneurship was an option in school, right? They wanted us to just be obedient slaves and learn to raise your hand and follow the rules and, teaching you how to be a good employee. Yeah. And I was always going against the grain. And it wasn't until after I dropped out of college, started my first business at 20, and then now, become a pretty successful entrepreneur. My mission is to help people become successful entrepreneurs and teach them how to, build a team and a system so that the business works even when you don't.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned like school and kind of hitting those barriers in school. My mom, when I told her the name of my company, Disrupt, and the name of my podcast, my magazine, all this fun stuff, she's like, oh yeah, it makes real sense. The teacher always said you were disrupting class.
That's you.
Yeah, but if you think about it, those are the people who change the world, right? When you think about the 1%, right? What is the 1%? If you're in a classroom of 30 people, well, the 1% might not even be in your class,
right?
You're talking about not 1 out of 30, you're talking about 1 out of 100. So out of 3 classes, maybe you have one crazy person. And that's why I think it's really powerful for people when they're trying to achieve success, they're trying to get to the next level. You really have to cut out a lot of the kindergarten friends, right? When you're in kindergarten, you don't get to choose who your friends are and who your inner circle is, right? But as you get older and you evolve, you get to choose who are your friends, who's in your circle, who are you learning from, who are you exposing yourself to? And that's why I love what you've done, because you created this massive community of entrepreneurs who are buying real estate, investing into real estate, making passive income, and like doing all these cool things. But before we jump into that, I want to learn more about your backstory. I know, now you're a multimillionaire, you're super successful, fancy guy, right? Wife, kids, picket fence is basically like the dream story. But I know it wasn't always like that. So tell us a little bit about your backstory and like how you got started.
So I was born into a family of entrepreneurs, but every business my family ran was always illegal. So my dad was in and out of jail his whole life, was an alcoholic. First business is we used to sell drugs when I was 7. Second business is we used to smuggle people across into the U.S. from Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like you were smuggling humans?
Human.
So human trafficking.
Yeah, pretty much.
Before Andrew Tate made it cool, you were human trafficking.
Yeah, so we had this big Astrovan, and if you imagine, right, you got the 2 passengers in the front, you got like 2 captain chairs in the middle, and in the back, there was basically like a row, and it's just like where you sit, and then where you lean against your bag in the back. Well, behind that back part and the actual doors that open to the outside, just imagine that we had like this, we welded like this metal that would go all the way across and all the way that way. So we would lay one guy this way and one guy this way, and we would charge $2,000 a pop. And I was 10. So that means I was born in 87. This is like 1997. So they would send me and my brother in the Astrovan to Mexico, and I would get paid $100 every time we would go. And my brother would do the driving, When we would, put them in there, I would make sure that no items of the clothing were hanging. So whenever the immigration officer would open and kind of check, he'd be like, all right, give us a pass. And they would think like, oh, who's going to do that with, a 10-year-old in the car, right? They would never think about that. So we did that.
So you're 10.
I'm 10.
And your job is to check.
Yeah, my job is to check and make sure that no items of clothing are hanging. Otherwise, they'd be like, like they would catch us.
Yeah.
And we would do that every weekend. I'd make $100. We'd go Saturdays, we'd go Sundays, and every time 2,000 a pop, 2,000 a head. So that was normal. And so the crazy part is that, like during the week, or even especially on the weekends, my dad would be like, Jorgito, he would call me. He said, let's go to McDonald's, mijo. He said, I'm going to get you a Happy Meal. And I was 7 years young, so we'd go. But before going to McDonald's, we go to these industrial buildings. And then he would be like, okay, like go do the exchange. And then like, just do an exchange with me real quick. So I'd give you the cash and I'd give you the drugs. And then it was normal. We just do like a swap. And the crazy part is I thought all kids sold drugs because the fish doesn't know that it's in the water, right? I was born into this environment where it was normal. My dad would be like in the kitchen table, like cutting up his drugs and weighing and bagging it. We just were born into that environment. So we never saw it as like, oh, that's wrong. We're like, this is normal. This is what all kids do.
Yeah, I have a word for that. It's called the misguided entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, selling drugs and some of these things that are super illegal, it is a form of entrepreneurship. It's just misguided.
Right.
And, regardless of your views on, say, immigration, maybe you think that immigration should be legal. We should just have open borders, right? But the fact of the matter is it's not legal. Mm-hmm. And if you get caught, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, right? Same thing with drugs, right? You might think, hey, pot's not that bad, right? That's what I thought when I was growing up. Oh, pot's not that bad, or maybe all drugs should be legal, right? Screw the big pharma companies or whatever. Right. But you can have that private belief and still decide to not live a life of crime because eventually you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So did you or your family or did anybody ever get in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was in and out of jail for all kinds of reasons. He was an alcoholic. Eventually my mom got caught and then she stopped. So I think when I was like maybe around 10 or 11, like she got caught and for like 10 years she had an attorney and they were fighting it and she ended up like winning the case and she never did it again. So fast forward, also when I was 7, the doctor told my dad that if he wanted to see his youngest son, Jorgito, grow up, he needed to stop drinking alcohol because he was drunk all the time. For 25 years, he was an alcoholic. And now when I was 12, he passed away from alcohol. And then when I was 13, my mom abandoned me. So at 13, I started living with her friend. Her name is Estela. And Estela, who used to also smuggle people across the border. Yeah, crazy. She actually lives in Tijuana, Mexico, and she can't come over here now because she got caught. But she told me, she said, hey, as long as you go to school, she said, I'll feed you, clothe you, and I'll put a roof over your head. And then when I was 16, she said, hey, I've taken care of you. Now you got to look after yourself. So at 16, got my first job, and I'm 100% financially on my own. Like, I had to grow up, learn how to shave. I mean, I started shaving when I was 14. It's that Mexican rough beard, So 16, I'm living completely on my own. Failed 7th grade, graduated high school with 4 Fs and 1 D, and then dropped out of college.
Wow. And when you were dropping out of college, what was the game plan? Was it like, I have a business and I'm going to go do something? Or was it like, this is not for me? And so when I escape,
I went to 3 semesters of community college right after high school. And I didn't really know that entrepreneurship was an option. Even at that time, it just wasn't something that I saw a lot or was around. So what happened?
Yeah, and there was really no, I don't know how old you are. I think we're around the same age. Yeah. And so there wasn't really like a Gary V or Grant Cardone. I mean, there wasn't an Instagram. It wasn't cool.
And so even though it was around, it just wasn't exposed like it is today.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream.
Yeah. You didn't see like, in my garage. Like, how do you get these Lamborghinis? It's like, well, he owns businesses.
I read books and I do business. Yeah.
So when I was in community college, I always loved to dance since I was a kid. So I joined the salsa team in the community college. And my salsa partner introduced me to bachata. And I fell in love with the dance so much that I started watching the few YouTube videos that there were back in the day in like 2006. And then I started teaching bachata in my friend's backyard and ended up turning into a whole business.
So that's your first business?
That was my first business.
That's not illegal? The first legal business.
First business that I intentionally started, and yes, it was legal. And what ended up happening is I started hearing about these conferences where you can go and teach and perform. Just like I'm at a conference right now, and I saw you at a conference a few weeks ago, right? People go there and they're speakers, right? So I figured, hey, what if me and my partner that I met at the time can go and teach at these workshops, at these festivals? We can teach, we can perform. And that's pretty normal. You teach workshops and you perform, and then you social dance in the evening. You dance with people until like 5, 6 in the morning. And so I start reaching out to these events, and they're like, we don't really know who you are, but based on the videos you sent me, seems like you guys are pretty decent. If you guys fly yourself here, pay your own hotel, we'll give you a pass and you guys can teach. And that was our exchange of investing in ourselves to start building our personal brands. And I traveled to 2 events. I went to Hawaii was the first one, and then Arizona. And so I had to miss 2 classes. And my teacher said, if you miss a 3rd class, you know that you get withdrawn. And then you got to start all over again. So at the time, I was also working at Bank of America. And I was a personal banker. So I would open up personal checking accounts, business checking accounts. And at the time, I would also do loans. So purchases, refinances, home equity lines of credit. And I had my cubicle. And back then I'm blessed because I feel like I had a podcast before podcasts were podcasts because I would sit with these entrepreneurs who own gas stations, apartment buildings, landscaping businesses. And I was talking about their business, helping set up their entities. That's where I learned about LLCs and corporations. Like I learned more working at B of A for, 18 months than I did in my previous 18 years of life about business or anything, just working there, meeting with
It's like a business degree.
Right.
Yeah.
Much. So I had to make a decision. I'm like, am I going to go all in on this dream of starting, going all in on this business of bachata, like teaching? Or am I going to stay in community college, which I don't really know what I'm doing, and just keep my job? So I did what any crazy entrepreneur would do, right? I jumped off the mountain and built an airplane on the way down. I quit my job, and I was making some pretty good money for people my age at the time, dropped out of community, and went all in on dance, went on to create like 8 streams of income. Had these festivals that I would put on every 6 months, every winter, every summer, 1,500 to 2,000 people for 10 years. We would sell out the hotels on the LAX Strip. I had a nightclub that I would run. I had a choreography company. I had instructional DVDs that people would buy online in 2009, 10, 11.
Yeah, so you became like an influencer in the dancing space.
I had over 10 million views on YouTube before 2010.
This is crazy. I've known you for like a long time, and I never knew this. We've hung out so many times, and this backstory, this is crazy.
And
so before your personal brand around real estate, which is where you are now, you had this whole alter ego,
completely different chapter. And I was like top 10 bachata instructors like all over the world.
Well, and it's so crazy though, because you took those skills,
right,
and now you've applied them to what you're doing now, right? And you might look at the 2 careers and think they're unrelated, but right away I see they're completely related. You're building community, you're learning business, you're learning commerce, you're building your personal brand, building your confidence, right? Speaking on stages, selling, right?
Being on camera,
skills, being on camera, and then you're just applying it to now the real estate industry. So now how do you pivot? How do you go from...
Right. So the pivot is... I was working at, they say that, like, I believe that whatever your belief is, you're going to take action and live in a certain way in order to validate those beliefs to be true. So my belief at the time is hard work equals success. So the way that manifested is I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, pretty much like 6-7 days a week. So when I wasn't living in airports and hotels, traveling, teaching the world, or after I would do that, I would come back, work with piled up privates, choreography, nightclub concerts that I would put on. And I just, basically my priority was money. I was money hungry, right? And I ended up getting a herniated disc in my back, right? My L5-S1. It got to the point where I couldn't dance, couldn't work out, then I couldn't run, then I couldn't walk, and then I couldn't stand up straight, and then I was laid out on the floor. And so I didn't have a health insurance at the time.
Because entrepreneurs don't.
That's right.
It's not part of the plan.
I mean, I do now, but back then I didn't in my early 20s. So my wife said, all right, babe, let's go to Tijuana. Go do a MRI. The doctor says, the surgeon, he says, normally when you have 3 millimeters bulging on your disc, you need a back surgery. Yours is 8, right? He says, I'm going to do your back surgery tomorrow. He said, by the way, it's a 50-50 chance you'll walk after the surgery. So that was like just a paradigm shift for me, what I was experiencing at that moment, because I'm like I knew I was going to be okay, but it just made me think different. I was like, I started asking myself better questions. They say when you ask better questions, you get better answers. So the question was, how do I make money without using my body? How do I make passive income, right? That's what led me into real estate. So that same year, I started buying real estate in 2012, bought my first property when I was 24, did my first new construction in the backyard at building another house in 2014, and then got into Airbnbs in 2017.
Wow. So you took your pain and you turned it into
profit.
Yeah.
Profit and passion.
Yeah. And breaking other people's backs, right? You let them do the construction. Yeah. That's crazy. So now you started in the real estate. I guess in the beginning there was no Airbnb, so you were just
it was around, but no one knew about Airbnb in the 2012, 13, 14. Like hardly anyone knew about it.
And nobody was using it,
right? And
probably post a house on there. Maybe you get one book in a year,
right? It wasn't a thing. It was like hotels, right? So in 2012, I bought my first house. I lived in the master, rented the other 3 rooms with the equivalent to cover the rent. I'm sorry, the mortgage and the utilities. I basically lived for free, and then I saved that money, which was $1,800 a month total for 2 years that I never had to pay, and that's how I built a back unit for like $30,000, like a little small studio. And it's crazy because it was only $30,000 to build. It was like a 220 square foot studio. And then I started renting it for $1,000. So now in 2014, I'm 26. I'm living mortgage payment free in the front and making $1,000 a passive income in the back. And it took 2.5 years, right? If you take the 12,000 divided into the initial investment of 30K, it took 2.5 years to get my 30K back. And something really connected there, because growing up, people always said money doesn't grow on trees. But I'm like, I got my 30K back.
It's growing in the backyard. What are you talking about?
It's still, I got my money back, but I'm still making 1,000. I said, as long as I own this asset, it's going to keep producing cash flow. And I was like, man, money does grow on trees. You just have to learn how to plant money seeds. And I just learned that people were just projecting their limiting beliefs about not being able to do it themselves. So long story short, in 2016, we go to Hawaii on vacation, and my best friend's wife books us on an Airbnb. I had no idea what it was. And then one of my students told me how she was making 3.5 times on Airbnb what she was making with her long-term tenants. And I'm like, all right, I got to check this thing out. So at the beginning of 2017, I had 4 lease agreements that were ending, and I turned 4 units into Airbnbs in March of 2017 on properties that I already owned. And that's how I got out of my own rat race. So I was refer to my dance business as my rat race, as my job, because it needed me for it to work.
Yeah.
And if it needs you to work, it's not a business, it's a job, right? And so I started making over 6 figures with those 4 units that I own. And I was like, dude, I'm exiting out of this dance business because I was at the nightclubs till 4 a.m, always traveling. I'm like, I want to get married in the near future and have kids. And so I was like, it's time to make a move. So in 2017, I left everything dance and went all in on Airbnbs and just all in on real estate. And then the way I got into subleasing is my wife was a law enforcement officer. She was actually a migra.
What?
Crazy, right? And I wanted to replace her 9 to 5 because she was a federal employee. She say she was going to be off in 15 minutes after an 8-hour shift. They'd be like, hey, you got to work another 8 hours. And she couldn't say no because it was federal. Like, you could get fired. Like, you got to follow the rules.
It's like the army, basically.
It's basically like the army.
The orders, yeah.
And so, I remember it was August of 2018, and we had like just become pregnant. And so, long story short, my wife has 2 autoimmune diseases, Sjogren's and rheumatoid arthritis. And anytime she was in a high stress environment, it would trigger like inflammation, and like her joints would hurt. She couldn't open the doorknob to open the room. Like, she would just get really ill. So I knew that if she kept working in that high stress environment, it was going to impact not just her health, but the baby's health. So I'm like, all right, I got to replace her 9 to 5. But I didn't have the money to buy the 3 units that I know I needed to replace her 6-figure career. So that's when I went into subleasing. I'm like, all right, I can't buy the properties, but if I rent them and get permission from the owner, I can then go and replace her 9 to 5. And that's exactly what I did, and replace her 9 to 5 right away.
That's incredible. Yeah, so it looks like at all these different steps in your career, you're finding these problems, these huge problems that happen, but you're turning them into profit, and you're, taking the lemons and turning them into lemonade, right? And then, so when did you start coaching others? When did that?
The following year, because I started making six figures right away. So in 2018, I started the coaching business.
Really? And so how did that evolve? And did it start with one person asking you? And
so what happened is me and my wife went plant-based vegan in 2017 to help fight her autoimmune stuff. We just went cold turkey, right? And in 2017. And that following year, 2018, we started hosting these mastermind events that we would call the Jorfany Weekender, right? So I'm Jorge, she's Stephanie, Jorfany. And there was three things that we were super passionate about, right? Eating plant-based, real estate, and relationship coaching. And at the time, I didn't understand this aspect of niching down. So we're like, dude, those are the three things we love. Let's go out and teach it to the world. So we started posting social media content. We started a YouTube channel. And we started hosting these in-person events. We set up $1,000 for 2 days, and then 10 to 15 people would.
It's vegan love and real estate.
Pretty much.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so we would literally teach everything. My wife would cook vegan, teach people how to eat vegan. People were eating vegan for the first time. We're teaching them how to veganize anything.
Oh, wow.
And we would rent this Airbnb in Venice Beach and do it right next to the water. And that's how it started. And then eventually I invested into a coaching program that taught me how to really niche down and how to build a system. And, we enrolled 12 people at 3K within a 6-week period and just took off from there.
That's incredible. And so does she still talk about the vegan stuff?
For a while, so what happened is one of my mentors said, hey, don't try to build two bridges at once, just niche down, pick one and go all in. And we're like, damn, should we go into the relationship or into the real estate? And I was like, babe, I think we can make more impact and more money with the real estate because we're teaching people how to make money. Yeah. So we put that to the side. She started posting videos on her own, and then, just over time. And every once in a while, she'll still post videos, and it's about mom life and vegan and travel hacks and things like that. And then I just went all in on the Airbnb stuff.
Really? And so now, for the people who don't know, in our audience, let's talk about some of the student successes. How many students have gone through your program, and what do you teach them? What do they learn? And
so we've had over 3,000 students in the last 5 years that have gone through our program. And we have students making anywhere from $5K a month to $100K a month gross revenue, right? Through Airbnb. Most of them are implementing the Airbnb arbitrage. I just got a testimonial 2 days ago from one of my students. Her name's Valentina. She's in Texas. Her story is crazy because she was born and raised in Venezuela, and she only moved to Texas 2 years ago. Didn't even speak English, right? Dude, last month she made $60,000 in net profit. Now she does have 3 partners, so it's not all for her. But she made $100K gross, $60,000 net profit with 14 Airbnb subleases. It's her boyfriend, and a real estate agent that all partnered together, and that's the portfolio they built in the last 2 years.
That's incredible.
You're talking from...
And she doesn't even speak English, really.
I mean, now she does. But, if you think of the income people make in Venezuela to now, whatever, even if she's making 5 or 10K of that, I'm not sure what her split is, right? Or 15. But it's a pretty big jump compared to what she was making. So, her life, drastically changed. And, I always tell people that owning the real estate should be the goal, right? You own a ton of real estate. I own a ton of real estate. Subleasing is never going to be better than owning, right? That's clear. But I always look at it as 2 phases, right? Just like in my situation, I knew I needed 3 Airbnbs to replace my wife's 9-to-5. And like myself, most people don't have the money to go and buy 3 properties with down payments and closing costs and furniture. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it right? To put 20% down. You're not supposed to buy 5% or 3.5% and then rent it out, right? That'd be mortgage fraud. And so subleasing is a way to go out there and replace your 9-to-5 as fast as possible. It's a cash flow strategy to make enough passive income to exceed your monthly living expenses. And then once you do that, then start buying real estate and create long-term wealth. So it's first get out of the rat race, then go and become rich like Tony Delgado.
Latino Wall Street, like the mafia. Yeah, we were at this mastermind. It's $50,000 minimum to be in the room. And it's me, you, and 3 other Latinos. I was yeah, we're the little Latino mafia. But that's what it's about, man. It's about creating more wealth and abundance in the Latino community. So I really love everything that you're doing. I want to get a little tactical.
Yeah.
So people know Airbnb, right? Most people, it's like Uber for renting houses. What is it that you teach that's different than maybe what people think about when they hear Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, the three main things that are the most important when getting into Airbnb subleasing, and again, Airbnb subleasing, right, for any of the viewers, is where you rent a property from an owner, and with their permission, you launch it on platforms like Airbnb and VRBO. And it's an arbitrage play. So the difference from what you pay the landlord and what you generate on Airbnb, like you make the profit. And in some ways, I always refer to it as like becoming the bank, because if you think about it, right, if I walk into the bank and I deposit $10,000 in a savings account and they give me close to zero, and then you go and borrow those 10,000 to go launch a business, they're going to charge you 10% on my money. And so essentially they're controlling the asset, the loan or whatever it is, right? So it's an arbitrage play. We're doing the exact same thing, but with property, right? We're taking control of other people's assets, renting it for a premium, and we make the profit without owning the asset. And so the three main things is, and in this order, is first, you got to verify the regulation. I think you learned about that, right? You got to verify that you can get a permit.
Yeah.
And if it's an HOA, stay away, because they're like little communist countries.
Oh,
right?
yeah. If it's an HOA, stay away.
If it's an HOA, stay away. Because even if the city says you could do Airbnb, the HOA can still say, well, not in my country. Right? Because they're like little countries, they make their own rules.
Yeah,
right.
Little dictatorship.
Yeah, little dictatorship.
Yeah. They can just change the rules and be like, "Oh, you can't do Airbnb now." It's like, well, what about when I bought it? There was no problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's an HOA, stay away, unless you're in Florida. Florida is very friendly in HOA communities, especially like around Disney World, like Orlando, Kissimmee, and all that. So first thing is make sure you can get a permit. Number two is we use, just like when you're buying or selling a property, you look at comps. The comps that we look at are through AirDNA's Rentalizer. It's like an online website platform, or Mashvisor. And you can see what other Airbnbs are generating to determine if you can make a profit. So like if other Airbnbs made an average of 7,000, over the course of the last 12 months on average per month, and you can rent a property for 3,000 or 3,500, then that's a no-brainer. And the goal is to be able to generate $2 for every dollar that you rent, right? So that covers the permission, right, from the city to get a permit. Now you verified your numbers. And then last but not least is getting permission in writing from the owner. Because if you don't get permission in writing, I get people that message me all the time. Hey, Jorge, I got an eviction notice. They're evicting me because they didn't know I was doing Airbnb. They found out. It's like all lease agreements say no subleasing, right? So you want to make sure you get permission in writing from the owner in order to have, to do it legitimately. You do those three things and you're golden.
Well, yeah, I mean, couldn't the landlord just turn around and just kick you out and say, I'm going to do Airbnb since you're making so much money, right?
It's a good question. I always give people the example, like when you go to your favorite, restaurant, barbershop, or nail salon, typically the people that own those businesses, like, don't own the real estate.
Yeah.
And to operate those businesses, right, just like Airbnb, you need to learn how to hire, how to delegate, how to build team, how to build systems. And when you look at our population in the U.S., right, 95% of our population are employees. And they don't know how to start businesses. Only 5% are entrepreneurs, but even like about 2.5% of those 5%, they're solopreneurs. So they're still running a business like a job where they're wearing all the hats. So it's only like 2.5% of our population that actually knows how to build a business.
Yeah, because it's hard managing people, like you said, delegating.
And, and so long story short, most landlords don't know how to run a business either. So Airbnb is a very operation intensive business, just like a barbershop, like a restaurant. You're never going to go to your, the landlord's never going to be like, you know what, maybe I should just go start this restaurant myself. It's like, who's going to do that? Or I'm just going to do the barbershop business myself. Oh, I'm just going to do the Airbnb. Like, it could happen, but it's rare. I've never had that situation, or even a student. It's just, it is a lot of work.
Yeah, totally. So then what do you do to manage all that work? What are your strategies around that? I mean, for us, when we switched on the Airbnb switch, we met with you in at a mastermind event, like I said, and we were like, we're thinking about doing Airbnb, and then we meet you, and I was like, oh my God, it's a sign from God. And you gave us like some coaching, and we applied it.
Airbnb gods.
Yes, the Airbnb gods have like decided. And then we made like 50 grand in the first month and a half. And so it was really good. We ran into some HOA beef and a couple other things, and we had multiple properties. It wasn't just one property, but then it was a lot of work. And we were like, oh my God. And we were lucky because we had already a cleaning staff because we were doing cleanings in the homes already.
Right.
And we had a handyman, a couple other people that we were able to deploy. And still, it was a lot of work. So like, what do you teach people? What tools are you giving people to accelerate the learning curve? Because if not, then you're going to become the cleaning lady.
Exactly.
Right? You're going to be
100%
cleaning the toilets if you don't fucking find somebody.
So there's a great book out there called E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber, and he talks about the 3 levels of entrepreneurship, right? So you have the technician, the manager, and then the entrepreneur, also known as the visionary. And so phase 1 is you're the technician, and technicians, all they care about is what do I do and how do I do it? Like they're just doers. These are your solopreneurs that wear all the hats in the business. They do the marketing, the sales, the delivery. It's like a one-stop shop, right? And that's when they don't have a business, they have a job. Level 2 is you become a manager and you manage the technicians. And so the technicians that you need in an Airbnb business is you need somebody to clean and someone to do maintenance. Those are the only 2 people you ever need in person. The third one is a virtual assistant. It could be anywhere in the world that does all the communications before, during, and after with each guest. So you become the manager, you hire those 3 technicians, and you manage them. And then they basically run the business. Like Tony Robbins says, right? You don't build a business, you build a team, and the team builds a business. The third level is once you have like 5 to 7 Airbnbs, or if your time is already super valuable, like you guys with the couple, then you hire a manager, right? You go into the entrepreneur, the visionary, you communicate with the manager, and the manager manages the technicians. So that's how it is right now. We have a portfolio of about like 18 properties, 8 that we own, 7 that we sublease, 3 that we manage. We have a manager that is very hands-on, very strong integrator, operator. He handles like everything. And I probably spend like an hour a week on the app. I like to sometimes go in there, see what's going on. But I could literally delete the app, like, because he's that good of an operator, you know? And so that allows, again, when you start going into that third level in any business, right now you're working on the business and not in the business, because then you got a strong operator, integrator that is basically, you know, doing everything. So when our students are starting, like 99%, they go into the manager and they just manage the team. They'll create a WhatsApp group, a Slack, put everybody in there, and then they all communicate with each other. The VA will ask the cleaner, hey, can they check in late? Can they check out early? Can they leave their luggage? Can they do that? Hey, we need more towels. Can you send us this, or whatever it is? And they communicate with each other, and that's how we structure them.
Oh, that's great. That's incredible. So, and then maybe your first Airbnb, you're the manager because you definitely have to figure it out and know what's going on. And then when you get to maybe 3 properties or more, then you're looking, hey, how do I remove myself, replace myself, put another manager in there? Right. And then are you like cutting in, like how do you incentivize the manager? Are you cutting them in on the upside, or are you giving them a salary? What are you doing?
Yeah, for us, we just do like flat fees.
Yeah.
Something that we've done in the past with cleaners, you want to incentivize the cleaners to do a good job because that's the most important thing in the business. So usually you have to get like 5 stars, you know, for a whole month or for 3 consecutive months. You can cut them a bonus or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
That's the way that we've structured it. But with our in-house management, it's just like a flat fee per property.
Got it. So I mean, I say all that to say you got to be running profitably
for sure
for a while to be able to take on that responsibility of putting up a salary, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why for us, we do it per property, because if we get 10 or if we have 20 or if we have 30, the income for them scales as we scale, right? So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And wow. So how many students have come through your program? I think you said it was 3,000. And then tell us like some more success stories. Tell us about the Venezuela.
Yeah, so I have another student. His name's Edgar. He came from Mexico to the U.S. when he was 12. Didn't speak English. He's a DACA recipient, right? And when I met him in 2019, he's like 27 now, so he was like 23, and he was doing Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats. He was also just working like at a pool, basically like a lifeguard, and he was making like $30K a year, right? So a little under $3K a month. And he came into the program. He actually purchased his first property, and then he went into subleasing later. Some people start all over their place, but they end up doing all multiple strategies. And he's had as high as like 30K months.
Wow.
And went from like, you know, living with his mom to like taking care of his mom, and then, you know, moving into this 33rd floor of this beautiful new apartment in downtown LA, like just overseeing the views and everything. And literally that guy's life has completely changed. I mean, think about it, going from 3K or less than 3K a month to hitting 30K months, you know, and at 20, in his mid 20s, you know, that's like powerful. He quit his job, I think, in like 2021. That's been, you know, pretty awesome. I have another student, Lupita, who used to be a hospice nurse, right? You know what that is? So hospice nurse is basically, it's kind of sad. They take care of people who have already said like they're going to die, right? So these people have like usually
on their deathbed.
Pretty much. They have weeks to months and they're there to like take care of them. So when I met her, bro, she used to carry this like big Motorola phone and then it would start beeping and she's like, oh my God, I got to go. Cause like she was on call 24/7 and she was working like 60 hours a week. And we'd always like joke around because she was like 30 at the time when she joined the program. She's actually my very first student in 2018. And she never had time to go on a date because she was always working. And she's like, ya estoy trentona. She's like, se me va a ir el tren. You know, that she's getting old and, you know, time's going to pass and like she's not going to be able to have kids. And she was just working like crazy hours. And it was really sad, like what she did, like just the energy that she was in. Like, you know, unfortunately, always taking care of people that were basically already given, you know, a time frame when they were going to die. And so she joined the program and now she's doing subleasing, she's doing co-hosting, she's also purchasing. And she quit her nursing job in August of 2020, like in the peak of the pandemic. Wow. And so, yeah, she quit that career that she like went to school for and basically replaced her job in like within 6 months. And crazy. So they both do subleasing a lot, but both Edgar and Lupita own over $1 million worth of real estate too. You know?
So they're creating generational wealth along the way.
Yeah, and now Lupita, she's getting married in like 2 weeks. Actually, she got married last week. I married her. Her and her husband. Yeah. I don't know what you call it, my wife.
You're a priest? I didn't know this. We missed that part of the story. Was that before or after you were smuggling
so I just got
over the border?
Ordained, you know, legally. And now I can marry people because two of my students asked me to marry them in the last 2 months, one in Costa Rica and one in Mexico. So I married Lupita and her husband last weekend, actually. And now their actual wedding party is in Mexico, like in 2 weeks.
They rented an Airbnb, obviously, to host
much. Right? So now we always look back. It's like, hey, like, you know, you let go of your job. And then she immediately met this guy because she was able to go on dates now. So now she's like getting married. They want to start a family ASAP. So it's pretty cool, man. I always tell people the money's great, but what's more important is like who you become in the process, because all these students who get into the Airbnb business, they're learning how to hire, how to delegate, how to build systems, how to build teams, how to do marketing, like customer service. So even if they didn't do Airbnb 2 years from now, they went into something different. Dude, now they have all these skills that they can deploy into any business because like 100% of what I teach them, they're business principles that apply to anything, not just Airbnb.
That's incredible. So tell me what's next for you now that you have all these students, all these success stories. You're building your real estate portfolio. Your students are building $1 million real estate portfolios. What's your
now that I got on your podcast, I'm pretty sure Grant Cardone's going to ask me to be on his podcast.
Yeah, most likely. He's going to convert all those Cardone TEDx buildings into Airbnbs.
That's right.
He's going to 10x his income.
Yeah, so you know, like I said, the mission is to help 1 million students become financially free, right? That's like the mission, to teach them that entrepreneurship is an option, how to do it successfully, how to implement it, and become the person so that they can, you know, have the time freedom, right? Just like me and you are making money right now from various businesses, but we're here just chopping it up. So that's one. And then two is just keep buying real estate. Like I said, we started doing some ground up development projects this year in LA. And what's next is doing some apartment buildings, like value add, and also buying boutique hotels and like raising capital and still doing short-term rentals and mid-term rentals, which is what I've always done since 2017, but just on bigger buildings with more doors and more keys.
Well, that's really something that I got really excited about last year when we started doing the Airbnb business. Was what if we started a hotel chain, right? It used to be that just Marriott and Hilton, these companies sort of had this monopoly on the market, but now you could start a boutique hotel brand, put it on Airbnb as a marketing channel, but now you're building your brand. They might come and book with you directly next time because they have such a good deal, and maybe you give them a coupon or something. And
start building that email list when they come in.
Yeah, exactly. And you could start the next Ritz-Carlton or the next Belmont hotel you could start that boutique, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's a really unique opportunity because before there were all these gatekeepers to that type of access to customers. And now, just the same way how Uber democratized the taxi business, this is democratizing hospitality, which is a much bigger opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
You know, driving Uber is nothing compared to actually owning your own hotel franchise or your own real estate empire, and then creating it so that it's passive. And I love that you've taken all these principles from various entrepreneurial books and coaches, and I know personally you invest a lot into coaching and learning so that you can develop your business and your skills. If you could go back in time and give some advice to the 10-year-old Eho version of yourself, what would you tell yourself?
I would say, Jorge, you're going to be rich. So take your foot off the brakes, put your foot on the effing gas, and get rich as fast as possible so that you can enjoy it as fast as possible. I mean, for as long as possible.
I love it. I love it. So I have one last question. It's something that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what does disrupt mean to you?
Yeah, I would say disrupts. If I think about it from like a mindset perspective, right? Most people have like a fixed mindset, and they don't think certain things are possible. Or some people might be listening to this and be like, well, you know, Jorge was probably born into, you know, rich family, or Tony was, you know, had a trust when he was a kid, you know, but we did it, right? We started from like -3, like below zero. And so I feel like disrupt to me is like when you disrupt your pattern, a way of thinking that keeps you limited and keeps you in that fixed mindset, you start thinking of like a growth mindset, right? Like we both have invested hundreds of thousands into like mentorships, and our Latino parents and grandparents would think that's crazy. But here we are disrupting our mindset. Our mindset is a reflection of our life. So now we're disrupting our life, and now we're disrupting other people. We have communities that we're impacting, but it all started with disrupting ourselves.
Yeah, that reminds me of Ed Milet, one of the events we were at together. He said, you can be the one that disrupts your family's tree and your family's legacy. So like you can be the one in your generation to build generational wealth, to think different, now to install this new belief system into your family so that you can have that domino effect on your future generation. So I love that.
They say that if you didn't come, like, even if you didn't come from a rich family can come from you. Or if you're born poor, it's not your fault. But if you die poor, it is your fault. So you got to go out there and disrupt yourself so you can disrupt the world.
Boom. I love it. My brother, thank you again for being on the show. If people want to connect with you on social media, what's the best place to do it?
At the Jorge Contreras. Make sure it's a verified account, because there's a ton of fake accounts out there.
I love it, man. Thanks again for being on the show.
Appreciate the opportunity.